back to running the WLSplot as an example. I will link this and update this link once this video is loaded on to YouTube. So if you're unfamiliar with let's start with the prerequisites. If you're unfamiliar with the terminal, the example below shows how to download files just by using GitHub. So you'll have the option to use the terminal or not use the terminal. If you want to learn more about the terminal, I recommend looking at this, and there are many other resources you can use for your research. And so like with the terminal, I'll use this function wget, which is a very useful function. And if you get into the terminal and use it all the time, you might use wget quite often beyond this little R package. But of course, that's optional. If you want to download files one by one, you can go to the file and then click this download button that appears on each file. So for example, if I go to my files here, I can go to examples, I can go to one of these blank worm lifespan files and download it in the top right. I can download it. But for now, let's go back. And so that's what I mean when you can just download those individually. To install wget, got to install. You can install it with brew. If you don't have brew, follow this installation instructions if you're on Mac. For app-based Linux like mine, you can use apt. So you would copy these, of course, open a terminal, paste it in, and run it. We highly recommend you install LibreOffice. Of course, you can use Excel, but we just recommend LibreOffice to everyone because it's free and works just as well. And then also the last prerequisite you need is actual worm lifespan data in the format that we require. And so if you want to see a blank WLS file, like I showed you how to download it just a second ago, but let's look at it. So if I link to this GitHub to where this is, we can see the basic outline of this worm lifespan. And so, for example, plate 1 on this day, on day 1 here, you'd put in how many alive or dead worms are on the plate or missing, and then so on for each day. You'd include information about the lifespan up here, and the worm-spreading bacteria treatment, date you picked eggs, date you added fooder, temperature, color are optional. And then the date and initials are really for the days to keep track of, and so that we can credit our researchers. So it's really just a blank one of these. You can then, of course, extend it for as long as you want, but we do need this column right here to be named alive, dead, missing, exploding, bagged, missing, really, the very minimum, just a missing. Okay, so you can download those and then punch in 1s and 0s and 10s and whatever data you get for this blank area. And so then once you have compiled, I guess, 2 or more conditions where you have maybe an N2 worm or an untreated worm, and then you have a treated worm or an RNAi worm, you can start using this. And so, of course, you can download it like I showed you by hand, or you can use wget to download it in the terminal. So, for example, if I copy this, and I guess I'll just make this again. I can open this in terminal if I right-click, and I can go wget that, and now I have that in my file where I opened my terminal. We don't want that right now. And of course, like I walked you through in the previous video, you need RStudio and the dependencies, so hopefully you got that far. I also recommend using Inkscape. Inkscape, I'll show you kind of how it works at the very end of this video, but the Inkscape's pretty useful in editing SVG plots and then exporting them, and yeah. So let's go through the standard operating procedure. So create a new directory for all your lifespan analysis. So we're just going to do it. Here's my blank WLSAutoplot. This is actually going to be published on GitHub, so it'll be one of these directories linked to this GitHub. So let's pretend this is our starting blank directory. So example WLSplot. We're going to do it in WLSAutoplot. So now step 2, create a new daughter directory or subdirectory within this directory. This will create raw worm lifespan data. The purpose of this will be so that we can organize our files pretty easily. So I'm going to make a folder called lifespan1. Within, I'm going to save the CSV files provided in this example, so I will literally pull them. And so here are the links to them. From Ubuntu, we can go copy, open in terminal, paste those in. And now we have our CSV files. Now we're ready to go to step 3. So just to make sure we're on the same page, we have the example WLSplot directory, or in my case, WLSAutoplot, with the lifespan1 directory with all our CSVs, which is exactly what we have here. Okay, step 3, navigate out of the daughter directory and create an R file to run WLSAutoplot function. For this example, I downloaded the R file and the example R file. That's what I'll grab and place it in this directory. This can be done by opening this file and clicking the download button or using wget. So I will grab wget, navigate out of the daughter directory, open in terminal, paste my wget function in there, and now I have this example WLSAutoplot function. And so now it looks like that. 4, open this R file with RStudio. So we have this example WLSAutoplot.r function. And if we run this all the way through, you can run it, of course, line by line, or Control-Shift-Enter will run the whole thing. I'll run it line by line, make sure it's all removed. I'll set my working directory to this, where this file is saved. You have to load scales in WLSplot, of course. And then this particular example is a genotype function, so there's an N2 worm, and then there's a couple gene deleted worms. Return data as false is the default, but it is a cool little function. I'll show you what it does. And so analyzing lifespan1, so it went into our lifespan1 subdirectory, compiled the raw lifespan data, and created some plots. So completed without any errors. If I do this equal to true, let's see, it'll return a data frame of the plotted data. But for now, let's go look and see what we created in our lifespan1. So it looks like we have stats and plots directories in here. Stats will have the gene deletions to the control in this case. So these YFG1s, your favorite gene 1 in comparison to N2. So if I open this in a spreadsheet, it'll give us the N observed, expected, and then the stats for Wilcoxon rank sum. But what we're interested in, of course, is the plots. Sorry, I guess it's not loading. There we go. So lifespan 1 looks something like this. We have this lifespan 1 directory that we're in, integrated into our title. We have N2 worms automatically labeled as black, and that's the case for all the vehicle, or for the vehicle for the negative control that I use. And then YFG1, 3, and 2, I rank them in my code by significance so that the colors stay consistent, so that when I scroll over to, hey, plotting these one by one, YFG1 is red and YFG3 is green, just like in this original plot. Other things, so yeah, the asterisks and mean lifespan and n number of worms are included in the legend. We have the definition of the asterisks down here, along with the researchers who conducted this experiment. So we can open these with Inkscape, and that's actually probably the last step. Yeah, so there's optional how to run it from the terminal. So when it's complete, that's what we saw. And now we can open these with Inkscape. Inkscape is a pretty powerful software, that open source software that can be used to edit text and colors and all of that. So I can edit this to today's date if I wanted to. I can Control-Shift-G ungroups all of these elements, and so it'll take a second. But now I should be able to grab these individually. Oh yeah, so check that out, and then I can ungroup them even further, and even grab this line if I wanted to, grab this line if I wanted to. I can hold Shift, select 2 lines at the same time, and then change the color. Oop, that's not going to do it, but I can do that. So let me show you. So I was changing it with fill. There, of course, is a fill and a stroke. So if I go to Object, Fill and Stroke, what I was just clicking was automatically the fill, but if I go to Stroke, Paint, go there, I start editing the actual line of it. Of course, it still has some grouping issues. So if we go Control-Z, I grab this and I go over here, I'm going to have to ungroup these guys. So Control-Shift-G. Now I can grab that line and that line only, and then of course change these to whatever I want. I can edit any text in here. And so on. And then of course, if you want to export as like a PNG or a JPEG, I can of course regroup. If I want to, I can go to File, Export PNG image, and follow the instructions here. I probably want to export the whole page, and then I can export as, and so on. Well, cool. That's, I believe, the end. Thanks for following along. I'll include timestamps, and please ask any questions if you have any. Thanks so much.